Welcome to the Live Like It's True podcast. I'm Shannon. I'm an author, a speaker, and a Bible teacher. And here on the show, I'm inviting you to drink deeply of the true story of the Bible and live like it's true. God chose to reveal himself through a book filled with interesting, astonishing, true stories, which collectively tell the story of him. I like to think of each story in the Bible as a container for truth. Once you know the story, you can easily pull it down from the shelf of your mind, rehearse the truth, and share it with a friend. So I hope that this episode will inspire you to better know the story, share the story, and live like it's true. Erika VanHaitsma is a dear friend of mine and joining us here today on the podcast. She is a happily married homeschooling mom of 5 from Michigan. She has a degree from Moody Bible Institute and a master's in Historical Geography and Archaeology from Jerusalem University College. Her passion is to add color to the black and white pages of Scripture by adding context and culture. And so you can listen to her podcast, the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. I listen to it quite a bit. I love your podcast, Erika. I also want to mention your new book. It's called Faith Walk, 50 Daily Devotions. And Erika just has such great insight. And so well done, Erika.
Well, thank you.
And welcome back. And, you've been a guest before. Your other episode was Jesus' proof that we'll get new bodies in heaven. We were talking about the resurrection, the Easter story, the first fruits. I mean, I have referred back to that conversation so many times. You just bring so many great insights. So I really, really have loved getting to know you over the years. You may not know, friends, Erika used to serve as my ministry assistant for several years and did such a fabulous job. But, we just have the same kind of passion. So this is going to be a great conversation. Well, we're going to talk about a really interesting story today from Matthew 15. And there are dogs mentioned in the story. And I can't remember. Do you guys have a dog, Erika?
No, we just got a cat. I love dogs.
Cat people.
I would be both.
Okay, you would be both.
I would be both.
That's unusual, I think.
Yes.
Most cat people are cats only kind of people. But we are totally dog people, partly because my sister's allergic to cats. So we can't have cats. But we just got a new puppy. We named him
Adorable.
I was just letting him come on camera for a moment with Erika. But his name is Mosey Mo. We've had him just for 2 weeks. He's so much fun. He's a Shih Tzu puppy. And so I'm thinking about dogs during meals, Erika. Have you ever noticed what dogs do during meals? Have you ever noticed
they sit right at your feet?
Oh, yeah. And when my kids were little, sitting in their high chairs, they would throw food overboard, right, to the puppy who was always just right there under, the puppy knew wherever the baby was, the puppy knew that's where I need to be because they're either going to get sloppy or get generous, right? And be tossing little bites of food. And that bothered me back then. And now one of our dogs, Louie, we have 2 Shih Tzus, and one of them just is like attached to my husband. If my husband's home, Louie is with him all the time. And so he always wants to get up on Ken's lap during mealtime. And so he'll sit there and he'll kind of rest his chin on the table and he just watches as everyone's eating. But he knows that food is not for him. I mean, once in a while, he'll kind of turn his chin and we'll go, oh, no, you don't. He knows better. He knows his place. But so that's kind of the picture we're going to have in mind as we talk about this story, about the faith of a Canaanite woman.
Right.
Matthew 15. So Erika, any context you want to give to this story before we dive in?
I think a couple things that we need to keep in mind. Mark 7 actually gives a context. It has the same story, and it tells us that Jesus and his disciples were trying to hide. Jesus' popularity was growing, and the religious leaders were starting to really get upset because he's shaking some things, and Rome's already breathing down their neck. They don't need anything else happening on the political scene, so they're going to start to try to quash what he's doing. And so Jesus is not ready for this showdown yet. So he's going to hide, to rest, to be with his disciples. And he's in this Gentile community. But there are a few Jewish homes. So he stays at one of the Jewish homes in this Gentile community, but he's surrounded by Gentiles. So hopefully he's got less crowds, but he's trying to hide. He's trying to stay quiet. But there's this Canaanite woman there. She's a Gentile, and she's a desperate mama.
A desperate mom, for sure.
Imagine the mom whose child is sick, and she's been to every doctor. Mm-hmm. She's been to every natural doctor. She's taken her child to Mayo. She's taken her child to Europe. She's done everything she can, and no one's been able to help her child. And I think that's the emotion of this woman in Matthew 15.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great setup. I didn't realize that they probably would have been in a Jewish home. I wasn't thinking that way.
Jesus, being a rabbi, would have just stayed in a Jewish home with his disciples. Then you don't have to worry about what's going on in the home. Are there idols? Sometimes they buried their dead in the floor of their house. And so you don't really know if you enter a Gentile home, are you walking on a grave? And what type of food is being served?
Yep. Yeah, because they have to keep all of those things kosher, right?
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's read then Matthew 15:21 through 24 in the NIV translation.
Sure. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel."
Okay, so what's surprising about this woman and the way that she approaches Jesus?
A couple things, actually. First of all, she's very desperate. I mean, Jesus is trying to hide, stay quiet, and she's pounding on the door of his house where he's staying, or she's following him around town, yelling at him. And she's a Gentile woman, so she's throwing herself out there in a very audacious way, but she's doing it respectfully because she calls him Lord, which is a term, my master. So she's already acknowledging he's somebody special. He has this high position. And she calls him Son of David, which is mind-blowing. We don't have time to get into what that means, but essentially she's calling him King of Israel. So this Canaanite woman has some Jewish training to call him King of Israel, Son of David. So she might be interacting with her Jewish neighbors. Maybe she's gone to synagogue with them. She's learned some things. She somehow recognizes that there's something special about this rabbi, this teacher, Jesus, and he's king and he's above her. And she's going to respectfully, but be pushy in his face.
Yeah. So she's there because her daughter is beyond sick. This is a desperate situation. And so she's not just a pushy woman. She's got a reason.
No. Yes. She's desperate.
Yeah. She's a desperate woman. I think that's different than a pushy woman, right?
It's true.
Yeah. So she's crossing all these barriers, like the gender barrier, but she's also, if he's in the home, she's not supposed to be entering. She knows that. Like they know that everybody knows that you can't go in their house. You can't eat with them, And so she had to cross these barriers to get to Jesus, but not, I like what you just said, not in a disrespectful way. It's very honoring. Like she's got perspective on him that the Jewish leaders do not, right? They're not calling him Son of David. They're not linking, because Son of David, that links him to all the prophecies. It was through David's line that the Messiah would come. So in essence, is she calling him the Messiah?
She is. She's calling him, Messiah, King of Israel. You're the one they've been waiting for. Now, does she know all the background to it? Who knows? But she's calling him the Messiah, King. Messiah means anointed one, but it took on the idea of kingship.
Okay. Yeah.
Because kings were anointed. So.
So is it, I'm back and forth on this. At first I'm like, oh my word, it's so surprising. He does not answer her a word. My translation says, like the silence of Jesus. And so part of me is like recognizing probably to the rest of the world, it looks like our God is silent to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
All the way back to Genesis 12, it looks like God has chosen his favorites, poured out his love and support and given himself basically to Israel, to this Hebrew nation. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the world is like, well, do you care about anybody but these Israelites? That it kind of feels like extreme favoritism. Like everybody else is just on the periphery. And you and me, we're not Jews, Erika, so we belong on the periphery. And so, but then on the other hand, I'm thinking maybe to the original readers, it makes a lot of sense that Jesus was silent when this woman comes to him. What do you think? Is this surprising or not surprising?
I think because of how we've seen Jesus already react, I think they would be a bit surprised. Definitely there would be some rabbis that you would not be surprised. There are some very arrogant, they're people. And there's always going to be an arrogance and a pride. And so I think for some, you'd be like, yeah, that fits that one, that teacher, that they're not really talking and responding to that poor woman. But I think with Jesus, he's already shown such a love and a compassion for people that are hurting. Yeah. I think his maybe even his disciples or the readers were a bit like, oh, wow, he didn't answer her. Like, because she acknowledges that she is a Gentile. She doesn't demand his help. She says, I need mercy. She's begging him for mercy. She's acknowledging she can't demand anything of this man because he isn't her king. Although he's master and above her, he's king of Israel, and she's not a part of Israel. Okay. And so she's begging for mercy, and she's acknowledging my daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession. Does that mean she's in pain? Does that mean it's trying to kill her or get her to hurt others? Like, we don't know, but as a mom, we can identify when your child suffers, you suffer. Yeah. And so the heartstrings are massively pulled on this story. You have this desperate mama who is begging for mercy. Yeah. And you would expect Jesus' first response would be, of course. Yes. Yeah, of course I'll help you. I will. Yes, this poor child. You've called me king. I would love to honor that and help you. But he is silent. And it is shocking. And I think even his disciples, because they finally come along and they're like, would you get rid of her? Either she's making a scene and they're embarrassed, and just tell her to leave, Jesus, or give her what she wants so she goes away. But either way, Jesus, deal with this woman. We've had enough. And then he answers, and his answer, I think, it's directed towards them, but I think it's in her hearing.
Okay. Before we go to that, demon possession, I'm glad that you kind of emphasized what that means. Like, this is something that is completely out of her control, right?
Yes.
She's powerless. She doesn't know how to get rid of this demon. And it's very dangerous for her daughter. I can't remember, does this come before or after the story of the demoniac, where Jesus goes to a Gentile region, and it's as if he's going with that demoniac man in mind. Right. Like we wonder if the other disciples even got out of the boat, He comes, we're not even sure, right? They're just like, oh, stay away. But Jesus goes, and this is the only thing he does in the Decapolis on that trip. Yeah, then he leaves. So it's like almost like he makes this special trip for a demoniac. So
we should know he can handle this. I mean, he's already done enough, at least in Matthew.
Right.
He can handle this.
Yeah. Well, and he not only can handle it, but he's shown compassion to Gentiles, to women, to demon-possessed people. Yes. Like, this is a very out of the ordinary response. And and then the disciples are like, deal with this. Sounds like they're annoyed.
Yes.
They're like,
this is embarrassing. She's making a scene.
Come on, right?
Yes.
It's like, I'm picturing my kids at the table saying, Mom, make the puppy go away. He's bugging me, right? Yes. I want to eat my food, because Jesus is going to give us a parable here in a minute. But then what's interesting about Jesus's response, you say Jesus is responding to the disciples, but in her earshot, probably.
Yeah, because she responds a bit to what he says.
Yeah, so it's almost like he's not responding to her. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I think she's here. I think she's in the vicinity, and he's speaking like maybe a stage whisper.
Okay.
So I'm talking to you guys, but I want everybody to hear. And he says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. So he's saying to her, you're right. I'm king of Israel. That's who I was sent to. As the Messiah, I am sent right now just to call the lost children of Abraham back to repentance. I'm not sent to the Gentiles yet. You guys are not included yet. And so he kind of puts up a barrier and says, in a way, he says, no, I'm not going there yet. I'm not sent to you just yet. But the story continues.
Yeah. So Jesus is sent by God for Israel. Like that is the primary reason that he was sent. And he's sent to Israel because all of the promises belong to Israel. All of the prophecies belong to Israel. And Jesus is the fulfillment of all of these. And so without those promises and those prophecies, the story is incomplete. That's why Jesus is sent to Israel.
Yes.
And really, if we go back to Genesis 12, I know you just did my Shaped by God's Promises Bible studies. You were so kind to share some kind words about that. But, even in Genesis 12, we see God mentioning the rest of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
He's making these promises to this one family. I'm going to make of you a great nation, but through you, I'm going to bless all the rest of the nations. So from the beginning, it has been God's intention. He had us in mind, right? When he made these promises to Abraham, but it seems exclusive. Like the word only stood out to me. Jesus answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. It does sound pretty exclusive. And yet it's because of the promises and the prophecies that Jesus has to go to Israel. Okay. So then this woman who overhears Jesus saying this, how does she respond? Can you read 25 through 28 now?
Yes. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Yes, Lord, she said, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed from that very hour.
All right. So is there anything surprising about her response to Jesus saying he's only sent to Israel?
Is there a teen you know and love who struggles with the endless pressure of comparison? Maybe she drives herself to exhaustion trying to prove she measures up. Or maybe she shrinks back to the shadows, convinced that she'll never measure up. In my brand new book, Comparison Girl for Teens, co-authored with Lee Nienhuis, we're talking about the new face of this age-old problem, comparison. We've got lots of fun quizzes and stories to keep her engaged, and we've broken up the chapters by topic, talking about things that she's got questions about, comparing beauty, comparing femininity, comparing popularity, and more. But ultimately, our goal is to invite your teen to Jesus's healthier, happier way of living me-free. So come visit comparisongirl.com and get the answers that both she and you need on how to thrive beyond measure in a world that compares.
Yeah, she agrees with him. And I think Matthew in verse 25 is a bit probably understating things when it says she came and knelt before him, because I wonder if she throws herself at his feet. She will not take no for an answer. She will not let him get off without acknowledging her, talking, interacting directly to her. And so I think she is right there clinging to his feet, but she again calls him Lord. You still see that desperation, but the humility still. Lord, help me. I need you. Right. And he puts up another roadblock. He puts up another barrier and says it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. And honestly, that's really harsh.
It sounds like, wait, I'm the dog, right?
Harsh. Right. And he's saying, I'm sent to Israel. I'm here to feed Israel. You Gentiles are not invited in yet. So no, I'm not here for you yet.
But I see also there's an order. It's like, how we feed our kids first, right? You feed the kids first.
Right.
There's an order. He's saying the puppy's going to get a treat, the puppy. And by the way, when he uses the word dog, it's a little dog. It's like he's talking about the puppies, there is
it's not
a little,
ugly. Yeah.
Cause
it's not as bad.
Right. It's not quite as bad. They would call the Gentiles dogs in a very derogatory way. Like they're unclean, they're dogs, like not kind way to refer to these other people. However, still calling her like you're the puppy in the story. The kids get the food.
I think you're right. He's calling her this. I think there are times we assume being nice is more important than being kind. And sometimes I've started to see a difference between being nice and kind. And sometimes being kind is doing the hard thing and saying the harsh thing. And so it comes across as not being nice, but you're doing something deeper. You're doing something more important than simply being the nice person. And that's what Jesus is doing here. He is trying to set her up, and she's going to reveal a depth of faith and a humility that it's going to amaze him. And so I think he's setting her up, and it comes across as harsh, but his test, she passes with flying colors,
right?
And that's the whole point.
Yeah, he is testing her here because
right.
I think many in this situation would be like, how dare you talk to me? How dare you call me the dog? Right. Where in essence, she's like, I'll be the dog, but even the dog gets some crumbs.
Right.
There's plenty on that table. Like I need something right now from you. Right.
Yeah, this woman amazes me, Shannon, because she's like, yes, Lord. Mm-hmm. You're right. I don't deserve anything from you because you're the King of Israel and you've been sent to Israel and I'm a Gentile. So I don't deserve anything, but all I'm asking for is a crumb.
Yeah.
And I know you can give me a crumb because a crumb from you, Jesus, is more than what I need. Mm-hmm. And you have way more than that to give. I mean, that blows my mind that she can be that humble and say, yes, you are right. But secondly, all I need is a crumb. Like, have you ever thought to ask God for just a crumb? Mm-hmm. Like, God, I just need a crumb of your patience, a crumb of your spirit right here. I need a crumb of your wisdom, Lord, because I know the amount of power behind you is infinite. It is like mountain size. And all I need is a pebble from your mountain. And you won't run out even when you give me that pebble because it's infinite. It just keeps going. And so she acknowledges she just needs the tiniest bit of attention from this man. And it will heal her daughter. That is an amazing amount of faith.
It is. That's amazing. I'm thinking also of the people who say it's not fair. Like, it's not fair that people who live in another country and haven't had the gospel there, that they would die in their sin. Like, that's just not fair. I can't believe in a God who he doesn't give equal opportunity, right? Is basically what they're saying. But this woman does not adopt that kind of philosophy.
No.
Right? She's, like, it's true. God did choose Israel and she is on the outside. And it's true. The gospel has come to certain parts of the world and other parts, they're not exposed to the light in the same way. And we can respond in a lack of faith saying, God, I can't trust a God like that. Or we can respond with extravagant faith like this woman who's like, yeah, none of us deserve the light to come into our community. None of us. But look I know that you favor Israel. I know that. I see that. But you have so much mercy. Surely it would spill over your table into the darkest corners, like to the little puppies, right? Who are desperate. And it's beautiful. It's very beautiful faith. And I also love Erika too, that when she says, even the dogs eat crumbs that fall from their table, she's like responding in his parable. He set up a parable. Mm-hmm. He doesn't call her a dog. He doesn't say, you Gentile dogs. He uses this little parable and she enters the story. So she's willing to go with him on this. Mm-hmm. She's not in any way countering. She's just in alignment with what he's just shared. and enters into the parable. I love that so much. She's pretty sharp. She's pretty good. She's pretty quick on her feet. She's a pretty cool lady, I think,
She's one I'm excited to meet in eternity and be like, so tell me about this.
Yes.
But one commentary I read said, this is the only person to win an argument with Jesus.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's how amazing her response is. You're right, Shannon. You are totally right. She enters in and she says, okay,
I'll be the dog.
I'll be the dog.
I'll be the dog.
Just give me the crumb. I will be anything.
Yeah.
And I think not only are we amazed, I think Jesus was amazed at her faith. And I love the idea that what amazes Jesus about people is not their clothing, their jobs, their money, how they look, but what amazes Jesus about people is their faith and either how much they have or their lack of it. And I just think he probably got the biggest smile on his face. And he was like, disciples, come here. Did you hear what she said? Did you hear this woman? That's amazing.
Yeah.
You won. You're right. Your daughter's healed. And I think it just thrilled his soul to say yes to this woman and see that faith that got pulled out of her because of those roadblocks. And I think we will meet this woman and her daughter in eternity. There's no doubt in my mind after this.
So great. That's so great.
I think Jesus just loved it.
I agree. And, I was looking at the part with the disciples, like that isn't really necessary to the story. I'm always looking for those parts that we don't need that part. And so why is it there, And so them saying, send her away. She's crying after us. And I wonder if he's pointing out something in them. They're part of this story. They don't need to be because it's like the woman with the demon possessed daughter, needing the crumb. But they're irrelevant. And yet I wonder if the way they were looking at her, Jesus wanted to correct. Like maybe he even noticed before that they were like rolling their eyes. Here's this woman, right? And I'm getting this thought from Kenneth Bailey. This isn't original with me, but he says, maybe Jesus is pinpointing, or he's kind of showing them what it looks like if you play this prejudice. Like, we send people away who don't fit our ministry description. They're not included.
Right.
And so, his silence is like, okay, showing differentiation to the disciples, and then like going like, I'm only for the house of Israel. Like, here you go. And then to see her fall at Jesus's feet. Like, is this really what you want? For people to just be left in their desperation when I'm here and I do have a crumb to give them? Like, is this really what you want?
Right.
And I, so I think that's a challenge for me, like to put people in parameters of like who Jesus came for, who is going to receive him, who might, I think we do have to deal with our own prejudice. And I'm not just talking about racial prejudice, but just like, people's pasts, people's, this type of family, how they live, how they vote, how they, what clothes they wear, whatever it is. Right. I love that you said Jesus is impressed with her faith. He doesn't have the same way of evaluating or judging people that we do. And the disciples, they're being discipled in this moment, right?
They are.
They are.
That's a great point, Shannon. I mean, and then he comes back with at the end, he calls her woman. He doesn't continue dog or pagan. Yeah. He calls her woman.
Oh,
he sees
woman,
her
he says.
and acknowledges her. And you're right. I think that's a great point. He is showing the disciples she is still made in the image of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is an amount of respect that this woman deserves being made in the image of God, like any person.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love, too, what Tim Keller said, that he sees in her, there's no superiority complex. No. She doesn't say, how dare you call me a dog? But there's also no inferiority complex, right? She is not, yes, woe is me. How dare I ever come and ask, like she is not afraid to assert herself and get that crumb that she needs. And so this is the appropriate way. And so how do we live like it's true? That we pray to a God and we don't come to him with a superiority complex, nor do we come to him with an inferiority complex.
Right.
How do we live like it's true that we can approach God for the crumb?
Yeah. A couple things that you see in this woman is she believes, first of all, that Jesus is able to help her, but she also believes he's willing to help her. And so even when he throws those roadblocks up, she's not stopping until she gets an answer directly from him.
And willing and able.
And because I have prayed many times, Shannon, and I've been like, I know, God, you can do this. I just don't know if you want to. And how often have I struggled with, I know God can, but will he answer me?
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, shape, or form. And I think this woman, she is tenacious. And she's clinging to him, even though like the door of heaven slams shut in her face.
Yeah.
She doesn't stop pounding on it.
There's silence to her at first.
Right.
And sometimes we feel that. We feel like heaven, like there is a door slammed and there is silence on the other end of our prayers.
But I think this woman knew that the God of Israel was good, ultimately a good God. And so she could sit there and like pound on the door, not afraid he was going to open it up and smite her. Right. But that he was going to listen, he cared. And I think if I really could live like this story was true, I think my prayers would be more like that. I would be willing to pound on the door of heaven, trusting that God is good, not afraid that he's going to get angry with me, that he has something better to do than deal with me, that my things are not important enough, that he doesn't really care, doesn't really listen. Like, no, even when heaven itself slams shut in my face, I'm still there pounding because I know behind that door is a good God.
Amen.
That I can trust.
I think often we go after these false narratives of the world. And I think you just dispelled several of those right in a row. Like one of them would be that God doesn't hear me. Another would be that he doesn't care. He doesn't want to give me good things. Another would be he can't, right?
Right.
He's impotent. There's nothing he can do. He doesn't see me. He doesn't care. He can't help. He doesn't want to. Like all of the above can be this false narrative. And this woman has the faith to set all of those aside and keep pounding on the door, right? So living like it's true is having this tenacity to approach God without an inferiority complex, but also without a superiority complex, you know, because he's the king. She called him Son of David. Like he's the king, he's the Lord, he gets to decide. And so we can't come to him with these prayers making demands. We're the ones on our knees begging, you know, it says she came and knelt before him. Right. This is the correct posture. It's a kneeling. It's a begging. It's not a demanding. You give me what's on that table. It's an all I need is a crumb. He is the king. He gets to decide. And yet here's what we're seeing. What we're learning about Jesus is that kind of faith it impresses him. He likes it. He responds to it. And when you want Jesus to say, I like this woman. I like her. I like her prayers. I like her faith. I mean, wouldn't that be just amazing that if he would say that about me and about you, Erika, and about our friends who are listening? Because I know, maybe we don't have demon possession, but we've got some heavy burdens in our lives. Yeah. We've got our own kids that are struggling. Maybe with anxiety, with depression, with a sickness and illness, with things that you need to be on your knees with tenacity, begging the king for a crumb, right? It had to be encouraging that this one that she called the Son of David said, "Oh, woman, great is your faith."
Yes.
And so I think to live like it's true is that Jesus may feel like he's silent, but he sees my faith, right? As I approach him in faith, that is honoring to him. And he honors me, right? That he's a Lord who honors me when I ask, when I beg, when I come to him on my knees. And he's the Lord who can heal. She was healed instantly, the word says. Be it done to you as you desire.
Yep.
So, well, Erika, thank you so much for an amazing conversation again. I have loved every minute of it. I so appreciate you. How can listeners find you and your podcast and your books?
Well, my sister and I do the podcast together, and she also has created a website for us, the Context and Color of the Bible. I think it's .com. And so you can find us there, find our podcast there. You can find, I've written a book, so that's on our website as well.
So great. Appreciate you guys and all that you do to serve the Lord.
Well, you too, Shannon. And thank you for having me. It's always an honor.
Let me just remind you that each story of the Bible is true. Collectively, these stories help us to know God and understand this true story that we are all part of. If you want to live like the true story is the true story, I've designed my false narrative watch list to help you identify and reject the world's lies, which are corrected by the truth of God's Word. This is a free download. There's a link in the show notes. It's going to help you take what we've discussed here on the podcast and live like it's true. We've also provided links for you to easily find our guests who have been here on the show. And I hope you'll also check out some of the resources that we've mentioned here in conversation. The links for all of those things are there for you in the show notes. Live Like It's True is part of the Resound Media Network. For more gospel-centered resources, go to resoundmedia.cc. Thanks to my son, Cade Popkin, for providing all of our music, and to my assistant, Katie Veenstra, who helps produce the show. And thanks to you for tuning in and for sharing this podcast with others. And now it's time to go live like it's true.